Today we're going to learn about being firm when you're under fire. So when the pressure's on, it's tough to stay steady. So has anybody ever had a time where it seems like it's very stressful, everything's getting to you, you trying not to crack, but you're trying to stand firm? Well, I had one of those a couple of years ago at work. So at work, most everybody knows me as very level-headed, fun, chill. Everybody, all my bosses tell me that, hey, when it gets hectic, you're always the one that's just putting your head down, going to work. And one day we had work, and we were about 2 hours behind our schedule of what we were supposed to do. And I had about 10 people come up to me back to back to back to back to back to back to back with issues. And so I'm sitting there trying to fix these issues, seeing that we're in a time crunch. I work at a place that's a medical device company, so I'm trying to get stuff out. These are going for surgeries for the next day to hopefully save somebody's life. So I literally have somebody's life in my hands, possibly dealing with this stuff. And I'm having issues. I'm having delay issues with other stuff. Well, this one kid comes walking up to me. He was a country boy, didn't know very well. And I had just had 9 other people come to me with issues. And I'm sitting there trying to figure it out. I was the team lead. This one kid comes walking up to me, and I happen to have a box in my hand. And he came up to me and taps me on the shoulder. Drew, I've got a problem. And I just looked at him. And by that point, I'd cracked. I was done. I was stressed out. I took the box, which was probably from here to here, and I just started slamming it into the ground, saying a lot of coarse words that I probably shouldn't have said. And I grabbed it and I chunked it across, missed about 2 or 3 people, and then walked out and went to go get his problem that he had because he couldn't figure out how to pick a box. And I was like, whatever, I got you. So I had to walk back after I was humbled and realized, hey, I could probably lose my job by freaking out, throwing the box, almost hitting somebody in the head, cursing everybody out because I was mad because we were behind and we couldn't get stuff together. So I had to come back and say, you know what? I'm sorry, guys. I should not have acted that way. I've got to be better. That's not the way I should act. As a leader, I shouldn't act that way. As a Christian, I shouldn't act that way. So I was kind of buckling under pressure. So this is no different than our spiritual life. Often we stop reading our Bible, listening to worship music, or even coming to church when the pressures of life get too complicated. We need to stand firm no matter what may be coming against us. How many of y'all feel that way? Y'all just don't feel like going to church because you had a long week. Some of us that have kids, you got a long week, you got kids, you stayed up late watching a movie with the kids, and then the kid didn't want to go to bed till really late. You wake up, you probably don't want to go to church that next day because you might be really tired. Or on Wednesdays, or the next day, that Tuesday or Monday. Let's say you go to church Sunday, come Monday, some people just don't want to get up and read their Bible. I understand that. I try to do a thing now where I at least read a verse a day, at least. And when I'm driving to work all by myself, I'm praying, I'm talking to God. When I'm at work, if I'm on a lift or doing anything, I'm praying and I'm talking to God. That's a thing that I'm trying to do myself to keep myself better. But are you steady under pressure? Are you firm when you're under fire? Do y'all feel like y'all are pretty steady, or do y'all feel like y'all crack a lot? You crack? I mean, it's hard. It's hard when you get a lot of pressure put on you. I mean, that's the point. You got to learn to be firm. Many people allow pressure, adversity to cause them to crack and compromise. We're called to stand firm against whatever comes and confidently serve the Lord. 1 Corinthians 15:58 says, "My dear brothers and sisters, be strong and immovable. Always work enthusiastically for the Lord, for you know that nothing you do for the Lord is ever useless." So, I mean, that's pretty profound. I mean, like I said, I work at a medical device company. And for most people, when I talk to them, they're like, I just pick a box. I put a piece of product in a box, or I package it, I tape it up, I don't do that much. And I'm like, you realize you've got somebody's life in your hands. They will never know it, but you got somebody's life in your hands. So it's more than what you think it is. And the stuff that we do just getting up every day is more than what we think it really is when it comes to God. So people who know their identity are steadfast, firm in the works of the Lord, always doing what is right. So we're about to get into Esther now. So Haman, the king's servant, plotted against the entire Jewish people over his pride over Mordecai's refusal to bow down to him. So I'm going to stop right there. I know there's a little more, but I'm going to backtrack a little bit for y'all. So in Esther 2-4, which when Josh told me about this, I was like, nobody ever really does anything through Esther. Like, in my 15 years of being a Christian, I've never heard anybody do a thing on Esther. So I'm reading it. I read all 9 chapters. Then I did audiobook of it twice because I was like, okay, I've got to really figure this out. Like, I want to know what's going on. And it is literally like a TV show of just all the twists and turns that go on with it. So Esther, again, she went to go be before the king because the queen was exiled. We don't know if she was executed or not, but she was basically exiled for not seeing King Xerxes. So she had to go through a year of beautification just to even see the king. And in that time, as we see Haman over here, he's starting to become into power. He hadn't quite got there yet, but Esther's uncle, Mordecai, helps to thwart a plot to kill the king. And I really liked it. I loved listening to it just because of the name of the two people. I immediately went into like wrestling mode because the two guys are Big Hannah and Parrish. So I'm sitting there like, oh, people from Susha, we've got Big Hannah and Parrish coming in the building. And here they are. They're plotting to kill King Xerxes. And Mordecai goes and tells the officials, and they go and they research it. They do their investigation, find out it's true. So they go and they kill Big Thana and Teresh. They Extreme Rules. They died. They got killed. They were hung. So, anyways, so right after that is when Haman comes to power. Well, when he comes to power, the king wanted everybody to bow down. And Mordecai, being a Jew, did not want to. So he didn't, and that just infuriated Haman. So he went to Xerxes and he was like, hey, I got 200,000 gold coins. I want you to put an edict out that on this day that we're going to throw some lots and find out the day. On that certain day, we're going to go, and that day only, we're going to kill all these people. He didn't say who it was. He didn't say Jews or anything like that to him. Now the king, being the king, and he was probably a money-hungry king, he was like, okay, you're paying for it. You're going to pay to have all these people get arms and go kill these people. That's fine. Do what you do. That's fine. So he goes and he has them send out letters to everybody inside King Xerxes' Rome and kingdom and say, hey, on this day, you can kill all the Jews. It is a purge day on the Jews. When I read it, I was like, oh my God, this is the purge before the purge. So he does all this. And now we're going back to, again, Haman manipulating the king into placing a bounty on the Jews that lived in the kingdom. Once that was found out by Mordecai, he stripped down into a sackcloth and came and told Esther about it. And Esther, of course, she had been hiding her identity at that time as a Jew. And in this, it says, Mordecai sent this reply to Esther, don't think for a moment that because you're in a palace, you will escape when all the other Jews are killed. If you keep quiet at a time like this, deliverance and relief for the Jews will arise from some other place, but you and your relatives will die. Who knows if perhaps you were made queen for such a time as this? When Esther sent the reply to Mordecai, go and gather together all the Jews of Susa, and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. My maids and I will do the same. And then, though it is against the law, I will go to see the king. If I must die, I must die." So Mordecai went away and did everything as Esther had ordered him. That's pretty powerful that she's like, "Hey, I need y'all to fast for me, and I'm going to do the same thing. My maids that aren't Jewish don't have to do this. They're going to do the same thing. And if I perish, if I die, not my last name, but the other one, if I perish, I perish." That would be tough for me, especially you got to think it's got to be tough for her because she's sitting in a palace, living pretty cush. I mean, she's doing pretty well for herself, and the thing that she has to do is go before the king, where the last queen that didn't go before the king was killed. And if you go before the king without being summoned, you're more than likely going to die. The only way you're not is if he shows favor by extending a golden scepter. So Esther faced a challenge to stay silent while her people were slaughtered or approach the king uninvited. The reason this was so daunting was that approaching the king again was uninvited was not only illegal but a guaranteed death sentence. Esther chose not to sit silently but to risk her own life under the threat of death. She knew it was the right thing to do. She had been made queen for such this time. Esther's conviction under this pressure is unflinching. If I perish, I perish. She was willing to give her own life to protect her people. Now, she didn't know what all was going to go on after this. She had no clue. So she's doing this on faith alone with an attitude that we should have today. You know, if we got to say something to somebody or stand up, we've got to stand up. Now, I had a philosophy class in college, and I had a philosophy teacher. Did not like Christians, did not like God, could not stand them. And I had many people that I knew that were in the class with me or had the class previous, and they just bowed down to whatever he said. And it did not sit well with me. So when he questioned God, I was the only one in my class that would step up for God, and I was like, "I'm sorry, you're wrong." He, and I caught him on things I didn't mean to, but I did. Like, if God's so powerful, why would he create, or how can he create a door that opens and closes at the same time? And I raised my hand. I was like, he already did. It's called a revolving door. He just looked dumbfounded, and he was like, "Well, okay. Well, if God's so great, why don't he create a stone big enough that he can't pick it up?" And I looked at him again. I go, "Why would he be so stupid? He's not. Why would he do something like that? He could if he wanted to, maybe, but I think he's got better things to do." So, I mean, that's the attitude we got to have. People are going to come against you at all times because of what you believe. And Esther was the same way, but she went to the king, and the king loved her so much that he kept saying, "I'll give you half my kingdom, whatever you ask." So at first she said, "Okay, well, what I'm going to do is come to this banquet that I'm going to do for you, and I'll reveal something." And so she revealed that she was a Jew and that she wanted everybody that was going to be killed to be spared. And she said, "Now I will complete it if you come back tomorrow to the feast I'm going to have for you." And again, both times he held out a scepter to give her grace. And that night, he couldn't sleep. So he went and looked up and through the annals to see what had happened and gone on. And that's where he found out that Mordecai had thwarted the plot to have him killed. And he had to come and say, "Hey, what did this guy Mordecai get?" And they were like, "Well, he didn't get anything." They're like, how did he not get anything?" "Well, who's out in the courtyard? We need somebody to give him whatever." So they just so happened Haman was out there. So they called Haman in. And they were like, "Haman, I want you to go and robe Mordecai with one of my robes, get one of my steeds, and parade him through the town proclaiming what he did." Now, granted, but Haman at this time was thinking he was going to be the one getting all this because he suggested everything. So instead, he's got to march around Mordecai, who he does not like, and say all these nice things. And he got so mad that he decided to put up, in the Bible, it says a 50 cubic, some of them say a guillotine, some of them say, or not a guillotine, but a pole or so. But I looked it up because I was like, what's 50 cubes? 75 feet. Basically a 75-foot pole by your house. I'm like, that's a pretty serious, like, you got to really hate somebody to sit there and put a 75-foot pole up. And so he goes and does this. Well, then the banquet happens. And that's when Esther says, you know what? He did it. Haman's the one that did all this. And Haman is the one that decreed that you kill all these Jews. I need you to undo this. Well, Xerxes kind of upset about this. He's mad. He's thinking, he's on the fence. Well, Haman's over there pleading for his life with Esther, falls on her on accident. Xerxes comes back, sees him on her, and is like, oh, well, now you're trying to mess with the queen. What kind of person are you? So then that 75-foot pole that he had, that's where he met his death. All this stuff, Esther never knew any of it. Esther's plan was just to ask. And all this was given to her by asking and being obedient. So be firm when you're under fire. 1 Peter 1, 8-9 says, you love him even though you have never seen him. Though you do not see him now, you trust him and you rejoice with a glorious, inexpressible joy. The rewards for trusting him will be the salvation of your souls. We have a very real and present enemy constantly prowling like a lion. The reality of life in Christ is the enemy will always have to destroy what God is doing inside you. He's always looking to devour those who are doing good. The bad news is that you always have a target on your back for a spiritual attack. The good news, however, is that you aren't alone. God will give you the power to resist the devil and stand firm in your faith. So when y'all are having a bad day, when y'all are having struggles, what's the one thing Josh always says? What's one of the things Josh always says? Never do life alone. I mean, that's telling you right there. God's got your back. He's the main one that's got your back, but don't do life alone. Go talk to somebody if you're having a stressed out, if you're getting to the point of breaking and you don't know what you're doing. Go talk to somebody. We got enough leaders here. We got Josh, we got Brittany, we got me, we got Galen. We got a lot of people here. If you don't want to talk to us, talk to a friend. Just talk to somebody. Because far too often we allow the pressures of life to cause us to give in to bad habits and poor coping mechanisms with sin. We can resist the enemy's distractions when we are firm in our identity as Christians. Resist the enemy's temptation, knowing your brothers and sisters in Christ are walking through it with you. Stand firm in your faith in Jesus. He is enough. Again, just what I said, nobody needs to do life alone. So we really need to just come together and understand that